Hello, I'm David Bulow, Director of Educational Programs at Proformative, the online community for corporate finance, accounting, treasury, and related professionals. I'd like to welcome everyone to today's webinar entitled Cloud Options for Finance, the Pros and Cons from renowned cloud expert Brian Sommer. Join us for the 1-hour webinar and learn from cloud expert Brian Sommer, CEO of TechVenture, as he breaks down the different types of cloud options for finance and accounting solutions and what you should use in your organization. If you're considering purchasing any cloud solutions, attendance to this webinar will help you greatly. A few items before we get started. I'd like to thank Intact for making this event possible and for their generous support, for which helps us deliver this webinar at no cost. I want to thank those who are returning to Proformative, and for those of you who are new, welcome. Proformative is the fastest growing online resource for senior level corporate finance, accounting, and treasury professionals. It's a uniquely valuable online peer network with peers talking to peers. We've also recently launched our Proformative Exchange, which is like Yelp, but corporate fin products and services. All of this comes to you completely noise-free. Please check it out at proformative.com. A link to today's presentation and a recording of this webinar will be sent out to all attendees within 24 hours of the event. It is also already posted on proformative.com/resources for you to download, share with your colleagues, and follow along. For those of you who would like CPE, you need to answer all 3 polling questions today and have pre-registered for CPE. If you do have any questions around CPE, please email us at cpe@proformative.com. We ask you to ask questions and make this interactive. Please use the question box within your GoToWebinar panel, and we will get those questions to our speakers during the Q&A session. You'll also be asked to take a short survey at the end of today's webinar. We greatly appreciate your feedback so we can continue to make this the best possible event and continue to improve in the future. Our learning objectives for today are to define and explain various flavors of the cloud, understand the cloud solutions that deliver the most value for your organization, and to help you understand the key considerations if you're buying into the cloud, and to develop the questions that you should ask each vendor. And now I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Mark Gervais. Mark manages Intact's product positioning, messaging, and go-to-market strategies with a focus on software and SaaS industry. Mark has worked in the technology industry in Silicon Valley for nearly a decade, focused primarily on cloud applications in recent years. Prior to Intact, Mark marketed mobile collaboration applications for Cisco Systems, specializing in cloud, BYOD, mobile devices and applications, and wireless technology. Earlier in his career, he worked as a CPA at a large public accounting firm with experience in taxation, audit, forensic accounting, and litigation support with a focus in the sports, entertainment, gaming, and hospitality industries. Mark has a bachelor's degree in economics and a master's in business administration from the University of California, Berkeley. And with that, it gives me great pleasure to turn the first part of this presentation over to Mark.
Thanks, David, for that introduction. It's a pleasure to be speaking to the Proformative audience today. It's a site that I like to visit pretty much every day because there's always something interesting going on. Now, our agenda for today, I'm going to handle some introductions, and then I'm going to hand it over to Brian Sommer, who we're joined by today, and he's going to really get into some depth about cloud solutions. My introduction here, I'm going to introduce first everyone to Intact and who we are. Then I'm going to introduce everyone to moving to the cloud. We'll have a little discussion there, and then I'll let Brian introduce himself. So for those of you who aren't as familiar with us as a company, Intact delivers an accounting and finance solution in the cloud. We're targeted at small, medium-sized organizations. We currently operate in over 35,000 locations, have over 6,000 customers, and we have experienced incredible growth over the last 4 years. In fact, Intact is the fastest growing cloud financial management provider. We're proud to be recognized by the AICPA as the only preferred cloud financial management provider. And so with that understanding of Intact, let's continue with the introduction on moving to the cloud. So if you're familiar with on-premises financial systems, and I'm going to assume that just about everyone is, you know that there are some drawbacks. They're not perfect. And I'm not going to get into all the drawbacks here. But it's also worth noting that there are some concerns with cloud financials. So I like to start off by introducing this concept. So in a survey taken of small to medium-sized businesses last year by the Cloud Accounting Institute, the top concerns about cloud financials were integrations and security. And those were named by nearly half of the survey respondents. The funny thing is, later this week, Cloud Accounting Institute is actually going to announce their 2013 survey results. So we're just a few days away from getting the latest data. But I imagine it'll be pretty close to what these 2012 numbers look like. So we'll say that integrations are already a major challenge with on-premises systems. So I think that integration concerns are very valid when it comes to moving to the cloud. And security is definitely another common concern with moving to the cloud, primarily around having your sensitive financial data stored in a data center that's not on your company's premises. It's tough to give up that control. So let's take a look at how cloud financials can address these concerns and deliver benefits above and beyond what a traditional on-premises solution can deliver today. So at Intact, we talk with thousands of companies a year, and what we consistently hear from them is that their legacy on-premises systems, such as Microsoft Dynamics GP or Sage, they're holding them back. And these customers or prospects, in some cases, they're considering a move to the cloud because of these three primary benefits that I'm going to cover. The first is that most on-premises finance systems are not adaptable. When you need the system to perform in a certain way, you almost always need to bring in custom programming work, usually by an IT professional. That's going to cost you downtime. It's going to cost you money. And as your business changes, or if you're growing, which hopefully we all are, growing and you're adding new entities, that legacy software is generally not going to adapt to your business unless you pay for even more custom programming. And chances are, if you've had to integrate your on-premises solutions with another business system, whether it's payroll, point of sale, CRM, donor management, if you're in the nonprofit space, you need some custom programming by an IT expert as well, just to handle that integration. Again, there's going to be some downtime and some money out of your pocket. And that's generally because most on-premises financial systems were built to stand alone. They were designed for manual data input, capturing journal entries, and not for working with these sophisticated, automated solutions that we use to run our businesses today. So the benefit of moving to the cloud there is that modern APIs allow cloud systems to easily integrate with each other. They let you get and choose the best applications for your business, the best tools you need, making all of your processes more efficient. And finally, the last point I'll make before handing it over to Brian is that on-premises financials place the IT cost and the maintenance burden on you, on your organization. Hardware, software, backup, storage, availability, all this is a full-time job. And it should really be an IT job. It's something that's generally not going to be core to your business, your role as a finance professional. And the other thing with on-premises financial systems is that chances are you're paying an annual maintenance fee. And you're going through periodic upgrades, but you're getting very little in return. And you're paying for a product that is not being improved all that often, maybe some bug fixes, some minor releases. It may even be on life support. You may even have an old version that's just nothing's happening with it. Cloud vendors, on the other hand, are known for delivering major product updates 3 to 4 times a year. And these upgrades happen automatically for you. You log in one day, and there's the new upgrades with your release notes and some help on how to take advantage of them. And don't forget about security and mobility. The cloud allows for easy remote access without the hassle of extra VPN, extra security technology that you don't have to own or maintain. And that makes you a lot more mobile. When our customers move to the cloud, the burden of managing IT, that's gone. Their data is kept in a world-class data center with a level of security, availability, and backup that small and medium-sized businesses, frankly, can't afford. And all you need for mobile access is a browser. So if these benefits sound appealing, and there are more, but these are 3 of the easiest ones to cover, you're not alone in considering the cloud. And I believe we have a polling question now.
Yes, that will bring our first polling question. Thank you very much for that, Mark. In just moments, you should be seeing the first of 3 polling questions on your screen. Please remember, if you've registered for CPE, you need to answer all 3 of our polling questions. We'll give that about 50 seconds. Also, this is a good time if you are looking to ask our speakers any questions. Use the question box in your GoToWebinar panel, and we will try to get to those in the Q&A session. We'll leave this up here for just a little bit more so everyone can get their answers in. We do ask everyone to answer the questions so that as they are statistical in nature, and this helps us get a better result. I'll leave this up just for a few more seconds to let you get your polling answers in. I'll be closing this down, and we would like to share these polling results with you, and you should be seeing that in moments here. And I will turn that over to you, Mark, and have any comments on seeing better functionality as 48% in our first polling question.
Yeah, thanks, David. Yeah, I think that touches a little bit on one of the points I was making earlier. A lot of these legacy on-premises systems are in the process of being migrated to the cloud, and they're kind of on life support. So a lot of the new functionality that's coming in systems is moving to these newer cloud versions that vendors want to upsell you to. Your Microsoft or Sage is eventually trying to move their base and churn them and get them to the cloud, collect more revenue that way. So there's a lot of times you'll see that the functionality is just not there in the current product. And the second most popular response is simply outgrowing it. That probably refers to QuickBooks. We get a lot of people coming to Intact because they have outgrown QuickBooks. It's made for that single entity, very basic business. And as transactions increase in volume, as your business grows, as you add entities, as you just introduce any type of complexity into your business, you're going to outgrow it pretty fast. So this poll match a lot of what we see with prospects and customers today.
Great. Thank you for that. And I would like to now introduce our second speaker. With just a second here. Brian Sommer is the CEO of TechVentive. Brian Sommer founded TechVentive, Inc. to help technology firms win more, win better, and win conclusively in the marketplace. Brian has a unique mixture of serious technology expertise, thousands of hours working with top executives for Fortune 500 firms, and a rock-solid marketing background. Brian closely follows what C-level executives think, feel, and need. He has brokered alliances, trained sales teams, and orchestrated massive marketing events. He has designed a new channel partner programs and trained both channel masters and their partners to reach new levels of mutual success. Brian is a prolific writer and has penned numerous articles in major business and technology magazines. He's also produced 2 blogs and has written a manuscript on the ERP market. Mark has a BBA in marketing and an MBA in finance from the University of Texas at Austin. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Brian.
Well, thank you very much, David. I'm going to take everyone, I guess, on a little bit of a journey about the cloud space and all the different kinds of deployment methods that are used in that area. I've been writing about the cloud for, I think, at least 2003. There have been companies like Salesforce.com that have been in it since about 1999. So if anybody thinks cloud is a relatively new phenomenon, it really isn't. So let's talk a little bit about the different kinds of cloud solutions that are out there. There's two terms you're going to hear frequently. One is called SaaS, which stands for Software as a Service. And just because something was a SaaS solution and somebody calls it a cloud solution doesn't mean that the two terms are exactly interchangeable. Software as a service usually refers to the ability to buy or use software on a subscription basis. And what most of you are going to hear from software companies is the ability to take advantage of this technology on a per usage, per month, or whatever kind of consumption model. It is a great way to buy something from a cash flow perspective, and I know many of you on the call are either controllers, CFOs, or accountants, and you'll get this. What it allows you to do is to expense the stuff out on small monthly payments as opposed to taking a big hit on a big capital expenditure right off the bat. Now, just because something's available on a monthly charge basis doesn't necessarily mean it's in the cloud. In fact, I can find lots of vendors who basically are kind of, think of it as leasing their product to you and spreading out the payments to you on a monthly kind of model. And while that sounds nice, that doesn't mean all your costs go away. In fact, in a survey that we did over at my research firm, Bond Analysis, we did this a couple of years back, we found out that between about 41 and 60% of the total cost of ownership of a financial accounting solution, let's say over 8 years, is going to be spent on your internal IT people and your internal personnel costs to patch, support, update, and maintain these applications. Now let's switch gears and let me go to the other side. There are cloud products, though. These are products where you don't necessarily have any computer hardware hardly. The servers and so forth exist in some data center somewhere else outside your firm. There's no hardware to buy. You basically consume the stuff, again, on a service kind of pricing basis. But I want to point out that there's two important financial differences here. There are some SaaS products that are really old on-premise products that have been hosted on some third party's data center, and I call those SaaScarades. And I would say you need to understand that if you get one of these older products, they were not designed to work in a concept I'll talk about in a moment called multi-tenant world, where the vendor is going to maintain the product for you. Or if they do maintain it, they're often maintaining every customer individually, and that's not saving anybody a whole lot of money. SaaScarades, in my opinion, generally are usually older products that are being tried to make run in a kind of a cloud-like way. There are cloud solutions where just because it's cloud doesn't mean the vendor is going to price it for you on a subscription, monthly charge basis. A lot of vendors will make that option available to you, but they would prefer that you pay like 2-3 years kind of an advance payment up front, because if you're a pure play cloud vendor, you need the cash flow, and if you want to avoid dilution on your share price by raising more stock or whatever to provide the capital, working capital to run your business, you'd like to collect more money up front faster. So just be aware that the two different terms have different financial connotations depending on what kind of a solution you're looking at and what kind of a deal you're willing to do from your own particular cash base. If we go to the next slide, you have several choices today. You can pick up a product that's either on premises, it's available in a private cloud that you'll create yourself. I'll talk about each of these in a moment. Or it could be a hosted single-tenant solution or multi-tenant. Let me tell you about the differences between each. An on-premise product is probably what many of you have grown up using if you've been practicing, whoops, we need to go back one. Well, this is fine. We'll just stay right here. If you've been using solutions for a number of years, an on-premises product is something where you have the hardware, you license software, you installed it or paid people to install it. You had to do the maintenance and upgrades on it. You decided when and if you would ever patch it or fix it, upgrade it, what have you. And essentially, you bore a huge amount of the cost and support overhead for that. That was about the only way you could get software for decades, actually, and that has been kind of the state of the industry for a long time. Another choice, let me jump down to the third one, the hosted single-tenant cloud. This is where somebody takes a product that maybe it was an on-premises product originally, and they have it running on some third-party data center. It could be like an Amazon center or a Google center, what have you. And what they do is they've bought time and they've arranged space for it, and they get some economies of scale and being able to allow this solution to scale up or down as your data consumption and computing needs vary. It gives you some flexibility, sometimes on a consumption basis, gives you some scalability, and you've transferred the hardware problems, if you will, to a third party. I did some calls the other day with a gentleman who moved everything in their credit union to one of these kind of environments and thoroughly loves it because he can take advantage of a provider who has huge scale, and that gives them access to skills and capabilities they never had before. A third solution is what's called a private cloud, and this is generally reserved for very large companies who want to create a cloud-like web browser kind of enabled world for their employees and suppliers and customers to access their systems. It looks like and is accessible through an internet connection, but it's all kept behind the firewall of the company. And lastly, there's something called a multi-tenant cloud. And this is a solution where multiple different people share a similar, share one piece of code simultaneously. Their data is kept logically separated, but often in one physical spot. Let me go through these in a little bit more detail. Let's go to the next slide. An on-premise vendor has a problem, and you know this problem probably very well if you've been using software for the last 5, 10, 20 years. They have to support a product, not just the current release starting from the top left, but several prior releases of the application software. You're going to call in with customer support calls, something broke, doesn't work, whatever, and they've got to be able to replicate a prior environment. That's expensive for them to do, and it requires them to keep things current and patching multiple open versions of the product at the same time. They would love to get out of that business if they could. Continuing down to the bottom left, they also know that you will install this product using a variety of third-party tools. You might not use your database that they originally created the product on. You're using something else, or you're on, excuse me, that would be the top right. You're running on a brand of hardware or model, a specific model of a piece of hardware that they don't have any experience with. It doesn't really matter whether it's hardware like servers, it could be on desktops, any of these things, they've got to be able to support it, and it's expensive, it's time consuming, and it's hard for them to replicate. You can see the other two areas on the slide, whether it's whether we're talking about different kinds of databases or systems management software, whether you're running it on a virtual machine kind of environment or you run on multi-processor, single processor, and we go on and on and on. The point of the slide are the following. This type of environment is very costly for a software vendor to build and develop on, and it makes their product release schedules very slow. It's one of the reasons why, haven't you ever wondered why a vendor often takes 18 months to 3 years to come out with a new release of their software? It's because they have to do all this regression testing for every possible combination of stuff you're going to throw at that product and may cause it to break. It is really hard for them to do the phone support or whatever for you because they can't necessarily replicate your exact technology configuration. It is pricey and difficult to, for these people to support. And lastly, there are many different kinds of technology stacks that are involved. Theirs, yours, many redundant ones in their own firm. And it just makes the release of products a pain. New applications, like Mark said, from cloud vendors, while he said they're producing like 3 and 4 releases a year, that's generally true for most vendors today. I have run into one vendor who bragged about having 106 new releases in 1 year alone. But that's because they only have one technology stack and one version of software, one kind of computer equipment, etc. to support. Next slide. In a single-tenant world, what we have is each customer has their own copy of the software. This is where, like, you took your old on-premises stuff and you put it up in a cloud computing environment. Every customer may be on a different version of the software. They may have everyone's got some different virtualization stuff going on. All the data is stored, physically separated as well. And it means that when a new release comes out, you or your software vendor has to go in and manually update every single instance of the software. And that is about as expensive as it was when you had to do it on your own machine. You've just basically moved the problem to another computer, but you haven't really solved anything other than maybe having a more scalable environment. Next slide. In a multi-tenant world, it's more like Google. And when any of us go use like the Google search engine, if you notice when we hit a big holiday like Father's Day, they'll change all the letters to look like, I don't know, neckties and other gifts that we give our dads. And they don't require you to go download new software. In fact, your search experience doesn't stop while it goes and downloads a new version of the Google app. There's none of that going on. Google only has, in a sense, one copy of its search software, and everybody accesses it. So there's a single copy of the code. So when Google updates it, everybody gets the update simultaneously and instantaneously, and that's of a huge benefit to the customers. On the data side, everybody's data is physically stored in the same database. It is logically separated. And I know because Mark mentioned that security is a concern with folks, almost all the good vendors now have encryption utilities that encrypt all this stuff. So even if you accidentally, I'll say, saw another customer's data, unless you could decrypt it, you still don't know what you could have seen there anyway. So the stuff, in a multi-tenant environment, you can quickly realize all of a sudden there's going to be a lot of savings with regard to I don't have to have people to maintain the code, and the vendor is going to maintain it, and the vendor can maintain thousands of customers simultaneously with a single patch. And that represents not only a major savings for the vendor and for the customer, but it takes a huge support headache off of your company. Let's go to the next slide. So when I'm a user of software, I appreciate when somebody else does the maintenance because that frees up my IT people to work on more strategic initiatives, and that's what I'm mentioned here in the top right. That when the maintenance is done by somebody else, IT can take on a more strategic role in the firm. They can build like your mobile apps and everything else. They're not patching and maintaining a fixed asset system. And I would challenge anybody to tell me how having IT applying patches and upgrades is really, advancing the competitive advantage of your organization.
Vendors have a really difficult time with this environment, and if you run into a vendor who's just totally in love with on-premises Bill, you got to wonder why that is. And I would strongly ask you tweak them a little bit, ask them that kind of question, because I'm telling you, it is an expensive proposition for them to support, unless it's just a really low-changing kind of application where they've pretty much solved all the bugs in it 5 or 10 years ago, at which point, I don't know if you really want to buy an old product anymore anyway. Let's go to the polling question then, and let's find out what we got.
I see that we've got 59% that either chose 10 or 15%, and that is right in the ballpark. That's good. What it means, and the reason I think people are guessing this, is that there's a lot of efficiency in the way that these vendors are managing their cloud operations, and with all the different types of services out there, they can keep cloud operations a pretty low percentage of their overall cost. So we'll let Brian talk a little bit more about that. He's got the answers on the upcoming slides and the discussion on that. But I will say to the people that guess 10 and 15%, you are right in the ballpark.
Anyway, let's look at the slide that talks about follow the money, where the multi-tenant revenues go, and where the, if you're looking at a vendor who does on-premises kind of solutions, they don't, they spend their money roughly about 35% on SG&A, 20% goes to profit. It's a good business. The cost of revenue and R&D make up about the other half of the revenue out there. What's interesting to me about this is they transfer a lot of the costs for supporting and maintaining applications to their customers. And as a result, they're not making, they're not having to pay, I guess, the freight for that. After you look on the multi-tenant one on the next slide, what you see is the R&D costs at 18% are the same for both kinds of companies. If I look at what are classified as cloud operations cost and implementation services cost, that's 29%. That makes up on a similar basis what the 27% on the cost of revenue is for the on-premises vendors. Let me explain those two numbers because they're the most important on this slide. The cloud operations cost amount to the money the vendor spends to build out their cloud data centers, to run the software, to provision their customers, and to actually operate and provide all the other people, headcount, staff, and upgrade these applications. It's only 10% of their total revenue goes to that, which to me is an incredibly cheap price and shows just what kind of scale these vendors can get when they take on the ownership of these of supporting these applications. Cost of sales is a higher number in the multi-tenant world. And part of that's because on a revenue basis, they don't get the giant upfront license fees like some of the on-premises vendors get, and they still are in growth mode right now where they're spending a lot of money and acquiring new customers and growing their business. So as we look into the future, the things you need to pose to potential software vendors is you want to find out exactly how many releases per year are they going to give you. My counsel to you, on those of you listening on this call, is I would try my best to get a vendor who does at least 3 to 4, I'd call them material releases in a year. This is of a cloud vendor, and if they do way more than that, you still need to kind of check out, what new functionality has shown up, and do I want all of that or turn some of that on, or do I have to do a little bit of work to go with it? But you don't want it so frequent that it's a pain. You also don't want so infrequent that it makes you wonder what kind of value are you getting out of this. Second, when the functional enhancements come in on the new releases, you want to make sure that new functionality is shipped in a turned-off state. So that suppose a vendor now came up with, I don't know, a 6th way to allocate a balance, it doesn't automatically default to that. It keeps your old options, and you can choose to use this new functionality when and whenever you do decide to turn it on. Security on it definitely need to be something you look at. Again, Mark, I know indicated that security was a concern. I would just like to point out that security with a lot of cloud vendors will absolutely amaze you. Many of them support things like ISO 27001. There's an IFAE, like 42 or 16. There's the old SAS 70 Part 2, which has been upgraded to a new standard. There are all of these different standards, and as you go through them, they look at so many different aspects of a data center, security, controls, risk programs, workflows, all that kind of stuff is all documented in there, including all kinds of disaster recovery and the like. You want to get comfortable with that, and you want to make sure that you're choosing a solution whose vendor has taken the stuff very seriously. My own experience with most of the cloud vendors points out that these firms realize that almost all their business is coming off the cloud, and they can't afford the publicity that would occur should they have a major breach, and they do tend to take the security issues very, very seriously. So I don't think you're going to find any surprises there, but you need to be comfortable, and you need to do your own due diligence. It's the only smart thing to do. And another key question area to probe is how they spend their R&D money. You want to make sure that they're focusing their R&D expenditures on the main cloud tech stack. They're not, diluting it by spending, like 85% of their spend is going to a bunch of older on-premise products, which, as I talked about at the top of the call, are expensive to maintain, expensive to troubleshoot, and so forth. There have been a few cases where there have been some vendors who've created a number of redundant or bought a bunch of redundant applications through acquisitions of multiple cloud and on-premise vendors. You want to probably stay away from that, because if you want a company that's going to be singularly focused on improving the product line that you're about to license and implement in your firm. Next slide, key points. So what that means is we have a new set of economics that are out there in the marketplace today. And again, my profound apologies for the technology screw-ups here. I don't know why that's happening, but the economics on this call, on the software world, are expect materially reduced cost of maintenance, upgrading, and supports related to these packages. These cloud solutions are going to have a very different set of economics involved. Number two, how you license the stuff, whether it's on a monthly subscription price or whether it's on an upfront large lump sum payment that maybe you get a great discount on. You'll want to do your own kind of cash flow and cost of capital kind of analysis on this stuff to find out what's really the right thing for you and your firm. I strongly recommend people take a good, at least probably 8-year kind of forward look out on the cost structure and model it out on any of these solutions to see kind of what it's going to run for you. Also look at what I think the value proposition from the vendor is going to be on the different kinds of solutions that they can pitch. Some vendors actually have a little of everything. They have some private cloud, some hosted, single-tenant stuff. They have multi-tenant products, and they still have their tried and true on-premises stuff. So you need to look at all of that, and figure out what kind of value proposition makes sense for your organization. And again, as I said before, watch where their R&D money is going. Mark, if you're still on the call, why don't you tell us a little bit about how they can get a copy of the white paper on all these economics?
Absolutely. Hey, thanks, Brian. Just a quick thought here. One of the reasons that we wanted to be involved in this webinar and on the Intact side is because, our position is clear, right? We're multi-tenant, and we're offering cloud financials in a multi-tenant environment. This is what we believe in. This is what our company's built on. But we like to be involved with analysts and pros like Brian, is because they've been following this for years. They've seen all sides and all possible combinations in the industry and how things are delivered, and he takes a very measured and independent stance. And so what Brian has done is he's essentially written up this webinar, and in more detail and more depth, a lot more numbers and more information on the research. And we're proud to offer that to you. He's got a whole, it's a short white paper, take a couple of pages, won't take you too long to read, but if you visit our website, intact.com, we've got a banner at the top of the home page. You can't miss it. It takes about a third of the home page. And there's 3 things up there scrolling through. The first one is an Intact video. The next one is this white paper. You click on that banner, download the economics of cloud financial software. It's free. I think we asked for your name and job title and things like that, but that is the place to go to get a copy of this white paper and a much more detailed analysis of the things we've covered today. And the next thing I want to cover is a couple of additional links. If you want to learn more about Intact, and I hope you do, because that's my job as marketing manager, we offer you a couple of opportunities. First, there is Intact.com. again, where there's loads of information. In fact, a little plug here, I've got a whole blog series on what it takes to switch to the cloud, some of the key considerations if you're moving from on-premises into the cloud. I think I've got about 7 or 8 entries there out of a 10-part series. But we also have a free trial that you can take, which is really easy to do in the cloud. Nothing fancy to deliver and provision, just sign up and you'll be good to go. We have some additional webinars and product tours so you can learn more about Intact. And of course, we're active on social media with Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, etc., etc. So please feel free to reach out to us online if you'd like to learn more.
Thank you, Mark and Brian, for that information. We apologize for having a little audio issues, but some great content there. And as we move into our Q&A session, please, we ask everyone to get your questions into that question box on the GoToWebinar panel. So, Mark, for the first question comes in a multi-tenant environment, how are updates, maintenance performed without interrupting service for everyone?
Sure. That is a good question, because I had mentioned earlier that you just walk in one morning and the updates are there, and we think of things like the Google example that Brian gave. How do these things work? I can give you one example from Intact, and then we can talk in general. But every quarter we update, we give a major update to our product, and what happens is that the system is down for about a minute, maybe 2 minutes, while we do a quick switch over, and we notify all our customers, let them know there's going to be downtime between 3 a.m. and 3:02 a.m. Pacific Coast or something like that, and then during the next login, the system is back up. So compare that to the 2 or 3 days it can sometimes take if you're doing a major upgrade on premises or installing a new version of QuickBooks that can even take hours to days depending on how smooth that goes. It's pretty minimal downtime. And that is how most of the big cloud services out there work. Again, Google or Amazon or Netflix, these things you log into. At some point, at a very quiet, planned time, they're going to flip it over to the new release, and it might be down for a minute or two, and you might experience a login delay, and then that's it. All the new features are there. And so it's a pretty smooth and seamless process, and again, with a B2B type of service, you even get the advance notice of those minute or two you won't have access to the system.
Okay, the next question comes in is, explain why integration is so easy, and can you talk about a little bit of how that was accomplished? And I think you touched on it, but maybe you can give a little more color to this.
I did. I talked about integrations earlier, and after I'm done yapping for a few seconds, I'd like to ask Brian to chime in, because he is truly a cloud expert. But it has to do with platforms, and there are these things called web services, and there are things called APIs, application programming interfaces. So this is sort of a common set of interfaces that programmers use and vendors open up to say, please, we would like you to connect with our product. And that's one of the tenets of cloud and web businesses. If you think about using Facebook and how you can go in and say, I want to connect Facebook to my Twitter, so all my tweets appear on Facebook, or I want to connect Facebook to Netflix, so I can let everybody know what movies I've just been watching. In fact, there's a lot of websites you go to. You see now up in the upper corner somewhere, the Facebook logo, the Twitter, there's the Reddit, whatever it might be. That's all API driven, and that's what the modern web is based on. It's this ecosystem of everybody opening up these programming interfaces to better integrate, to have a smoother transition, so you don't have to open up a new window, use another login and password. And that's essentially how it works with modern cloud financial systems as well. You take Intact as an example. Of course I'm going to give you the Intact example. We open up APIs, so services like Bill.com for online payments, or Wells Fargo for online banking, can can integrate easily, so all you need is your login, your password, and that connection is going to happen on the back end. The other thing it allows it to do is have partners build specific integrations for things that are a little more complex. Maybe not like a point and click with Wells Fargo, but say you want to use Salesforce for your front-end CRM, and you've got all your lead information and contact and prospect and quote information, and you want to pull that into your finance system of record. Intact has gone and worked with Salesforce to build a very detailed integration. It's going to map the fields in Salesforce to the fields in Intact, and that is, again, through these APIs, it's got to be some custom work. It's a module, it's a connector, but because of the cloud service, web services and APIs, it's very easy to build, it's easy to maintain. The integration does not break when either Salesforce upgrades or when Intact upgrades, because it's built to be flexible in that manner. And so we make it real easy for partners and other vendors to integrate with our system, and that's what leading cloud vendors will do. Now, in many cases, it can even be done in a mix of cloud and on-premises solutions. So there's a lot of systems I know out there that are cloud-based but might integrate with Dynamics GP, for example. And again, that just goes to show the power of web services and modern APIs that the cloud is built to integrate. And the cloud is built to keep you moving smoothly from service to service.
So let me pile on.
David?
Yes.
Let me pile on just a little bit more with Mark's comment there, if I could, this is Brian. You know, if I roll back the hands of time, say 10, 15, 20 years ago, there were no companies like Boomi, Informatica, or Cast Iron, which I think is now part of IBM, and Dell actually now owns Boomi. But, you know, anybody on the call, I would encourage you just to even go look at those companies. They specialize in integrating cloud applications to other cloud applications or cloud applications to on-premise applications. The connectors, the world of connectors and integration is just amazingly different today than it was a decade ago. So if your last experience with upgrading stuff was like getting ready for Y2K, boy, are you in for a change in what is available from an integration perspective. And a lot of integrators, a lot of software companies who are real good pure play cloud vendors, they knew they were going to have to create products that ran on more standard types of like mobile devices and tablets and smartphones and everything else. Integration had to be something that they were going to build in from the get-go, and that's why so many of them use like web services, SOA, and so many other different protocols that just make the integration really click really fast. David?
Okay, Mark, question here comes, does Intact compete against Oracle, PeopleSoft, or SAP, or is the mid-market your sweet spot?
Oh, I love that question. The mid-market is our sweet spot. We tend to fit in, the way I describe it best is for organizations that are graduating from QuickBooks, either getting larger employee-wise, revenue-wise, transaction-wise, or complexity, and yet we don't go into the big enterprise space. We're not in there with the Oracles, SAPs, even Workday, for example. Those are probably the top three we see with enterprise financial. So we're in that middle market. You know, once you get to 20 employees, even 10 employees, up to maybe 100 employees. 1,000 employees. Wrong zero there. So we're in there with. There's a couple of other firms that we compete with in that space as well. But we're definitely built to serve that middle market space. And I'll add that even a couple of years ago, it wasn't up to 1,000 employees. We're growing, we're scaling, and the number of transactions, the revenue base, number of entities, number of employees that we can support keeps growing. So our retention rate right now is about 95%. And what that means is our growth of the service we provide is keeping up with our customers who have also been growing with us for 3, 5, 7 years. They haven't outgrown us yet. They haven't had to go from QuickBooks to Intact and then 3 years later move to some sort of enterprise solution. So, you know, you look 3 years out, 5 years out with Intact, we're still going to be in that mid-market space. No plans for the enterprise, but that what we define as mid-market is going to continue to grow and grow until we see this very long tail at either end. QuickBooks at the 20 and below, and you'll see, I'm sure Larry Ellison is still going to be fighting it out with SAP and the good folks over at Workday, but that's going to be for, you know, the Fortune Global 100.
Okay, we have time for one quick answer. The question comes on, what cloud solution do most companies migrate to when they are presently using QuickBooks?
Well,
you want me to
Brian, maybe you want to take a stab at this, because I'm just going to do another Intact commercial if I keep talking.
Well, there are a few things you can pick and choose from. They could be looking at Xero, Intact, NetSuite. Some of those are some of the players out there. There's a few of them out. Intact certainly generally ends up on a significant number of shortlists, and I'm not saying that to give a plug for you guys. That's the real honest to goodness reality of it all. What Mark, on the previous answer you're giving, Mark, I thought you were being a little bit disingenuous, because they've continued to add some rather robust functionality to their product, which lets it scale up into fulfilling our functional needs of even larger companies. But you know, you're right. Your sweet spots in the SMB market, no question about that. That's where you've had huge traction. There are a number of players who've tried to come out with cloud solutions. There have been some who started off as just a very simple kind of solution and remained. Some who started off and have continued to expand. Some have created multiple product lines. But I would say the ones I rattled off are usually the ones you're going to find on my short list, and Intact's going to be on a pile of them. So
Thank you.
That would be my answer.
Thank you. That pretty much wraps up our Q&A. I want to thank Mark and Brian for that information. I want to remind everyone we will be asked to take a short survey if the webinar concludes, and we really appreciate your feedback. Also, please join us at Proformative.com to ask additional questions and continue this discussions. If you have any questions around CPE, please send us an email at cpe@Proformative.com. Also want to remind everybody about CFO Dimensions. This is the premier finance strategic leadership conference in New York, August 22nd. If you do have any questions, we will have a link in the post-survey so that you can get more information on this. I want to thank Intact for sponsoring this great event, and during the post-survey you will have a link to get an introduction to either one of our speakers, Mark or to Brian or to Intact, so that they can follow up with anything that you didn't get answered. If we didn't get your question answered, we will forward them off to the speakers so they can follow up with you directly. So again, thank you guys. Great presentation. I will now launch our third and final polling question. Please remember, if you're looking for CPE, you need to answer all three polling questions. This will be coming up on your screen just shortly here. Bear with me. There we go. And if you can please get your answers in, that would really be appreciated. And I also want to thank our audience for giving us your time and trusting us with this. We're sorry about, apologize for some of the audio issues, but we hope you will continue to support Proformative and come back, as we intend to bring you great webinars. So thank you. Please get your this last CPE continued. If you do want a connection with our speakers, remember in the survey, which will follow in just a couple seconds here, you'll be able to have an introduction to Intact and our speakers. I'll be closing this down as this concludes our webinar. I want to thank you for your time. Have a great rest of your day.